Now, your first glimpse at dramatic new images of the discovery of an American warship lost 72 years ago.
July 30th, 1945. The USS Indianapolis vanishes with 1,196 men aboard, leaving only silence and shark-filled waters. For decades, we were told no distress call was ever sent before she disappeared. But inside her radio room, a discovery has emerged that should not exist. It is proof the crew's SOS did go out, only for higher command to ignore it. If this artifact is real, it rewrites the disaster entirely, and it raises a question the official story cannot answer. Why was their plea for rescue left unheard? The cover-up starts before the first torpedo hits. Orders arrived at Mare Island under the tightest security of the war. The USS Indianapolis, a heavy cruiser with a reputation for speed and reliability, was chosen for a mission so secret that most of her crew would never know its true purpose. On July 16, 1945, dock workers loaded a lead-lined canister into a locked compartment. The manifest listed only classified cargo. In reality, this was the uranium core for the atomic bomb Little Boy, bound for Tinian Island, 5,000 miles across the Pacific. Naval Command demanded absolute silence. No lights at night, no radio chatter, no escort. Even the ship's destination was withheld from most officers. The logic was cold. A lone cruiser at flank speed would draw less attention than a convoy. Every hour mattered. The Indianapolis steamed out of San Francisco at 24 knots, pushing her engines to the red line for days on end. Crewmen felt the urgency in every order. No drills, no delays, no shore leave. The ship tore across the Pacific in a straight shot, pausing only to refuel at Pearl Harbor before resuming her relentless pace. 10 days after departure, the Indianapolis reached Tinian on July 26, 1945. The canister was offloaded under armed guard and vanished into a waiting truck. The entire operation took less than an hour. By the time the bomb was assembled and loaded onto a B-29, the Indianapolis was already sailing west, her orders shifting to routine fleet duty. The crew had set a record San Francisco to Tinian in just 10 days, a feat unmatched by any other ship during the war. No one paused to celebrate. The mission's success depended on speed and secrecy, not recognition. The ship's log recorded the date and time of arrival, the cargo's delivery, and the immediate turn back to sea. None of it hinted at the storm gathering ahead. The Indianapolis was now alone, exhausted, and steaming into waters where the war had not yet ended. Requests for a destroyer escort went up the chain as soon as the Indianapolis received her next set of orders. Captain McVay and his officers knew the route west from Tinian was alive with Japanese submarines. Intelligence reports from just days earlier flagged enemy activity along the so-called Petrel lane, a narrow corridor stretching toward Leyte Gulf. Standard Navy protocol called for a screening vessel when transiting hostile waters, especially for a ship that had just completed a top-secret mission. But the answer from command was unyielding: proceed alone. No destroyer would join them. The official explanation cited a shortage of available escorts, but the reality was more complicated. The war was in its final weeks, and resources were stretched thin across the Pacific. Even so, other ships on less urgent business received protection. Operational orders left no room for debate. The Indianapolis was assigned to the exposed Pedro Lane, a route notorious for submarine ambushes. The crew had no choice but to follow orders, trusting the judgment of distant commanders. Communications from fleet headquarters made it clear speed and secrecy outweighed the risks. The ship's position and schedule were classified, leaving her isolated from the usual web of fleet support. There was no backup if something went wrong. Signal intelligence summaries landed on commanders' desks in Guam and Leyte, warning of Japanese Y-class submarines prowling the area. The I-58 under Lieutenant Commander Mochitsura Hashimoto had been reported just days before, lurking near the very route the Indianapolis would take. Yet the decision stood. The ship would steam unescorted, her course and arrival time logged only in a handful of secure offices. The crew was given no details about the threat ahead. For them, the orders meant another long watch, another night on open water. But for those with access to the intelligence, the risks were impossible to ignore. The Indianapolis, exhausted from her record run, was now alone in one of the most dangerous stretches of ocean left in the war. With every mile west, the margin for error narrowed. The next move would not come from the bridge, but from the darkness below the waves. July 30th, 1945. The Indianapolis cuts through the dark, humid air of the Western Pacific, running at 17 knots. Below the surface, Lieutenant Commander Mochitsura Hashimoto's AU-58 stalks its prey. At 0015 hours, 2 Type 95 torpedoes, each packed with 893 pounds of high explosive, leave the submarine's tubes. The first torpedo slams into the bow, tearing open steel plating and flooding forward compartments in seconds. The impact shears bulkheads, mangles anchor chains, and throws men from their bunks. Before the shock can settle, the second warhead detonates amidships, right where the fuel tanks and powder magazine are stacked together. The explosion is deafening. Steel decks buckle upward, oil tanks rupture, spraying burning fuel through the passageways. The main powder magazine ignites, sending a pressure wave that shatters hatches and lifts the superstructure off its mounts. Electrical circuits arc and fail. Lights flicker, then die. The blast rips through the communications deck, twisting beams and collapsing bulkheads. Fire roars through the heart of the ship, swallowing compartments faster than men can escape. In Radio Room 1, equipment is hurled against the walls. The force bends metal racks and snaps cables like thread. The jolt severs power lines, but in these first seconds, some circuits cling to life. Crewmen feel the deck tilt beneath their feet. The Indianapolis is mortally wounded. Water pours in through torn seams at the bow and the gaping hole amidships. Compartments seal with men trapped inside. Those still able to move scramble for ladders, blinded by smoke and burning oil. The ship's spine is broken. Structural integrity collapses. The forward third of the Indianapolis begins to separate, the bow twisting away as if torn by a giant's hand. In less than a minute, the list becomes a roll. The cruiser's massive weight shifts to starboard. Below decks, generators sputter as seawater floods the engine rooms. Some lights flicker back to life, then vanish for good. The main deck is now at a steep angle. Crewmen are forced to crawl or slide toward the rails, desperate for a way out. 12 minutes after the first torpedo struck, the Indianapolis is gone. 300 men have already vanished with her. The rest are left in the water, scattered in oil and debris. The violence of those twin explosions has left no doubt this was not a slow sinking. It was a mechanical annihilation, every system tested to its breaking point and beyond. In the chaos, the question of whether power survived in the radio room will become the most contested point in the investigation that follows. The ROV drops away from Petrel's launch platform, swallowed by the blackness of the Pacific. 3 hours of silent descent to a depth of 18,000 feet erase every trace of sunlight. The only sound is the hum of thrusters and the faint ping of sonar. On the control screens, a strip of metadata scrolls showing depth, heading, latitude, and temperature. The hull of the Indianapolis appears out of the gloom, hull numbers still visible through a haze of silt and rust. The drone glides along the twisted wreckage, its LED arrays carving tunnels of cold blue light through the water. On the communications deck, the superstructure is torn open. The ROV's manipulator arms hold steady as the camera pushes through a jagged breach. Inside, everything is frozen in place. Drawers are forced open by the blast. Fragments of headphones scatter. A tangle of wire drapes over the shattered desk. At the far end, the main transmitter table is half buried in silt. Most of the equipment is crushed or missing, but bolted to the surface is a single Morse key, the kind issued to every Navy radio room in 1945. Its black bakelite knob is coated in a film of iron oxide. The brass lever is pressed down, held in place by a corroded steel clip. The drone's lights catch the faint outline of the key's contacts. They are fused together, locked by decades of pressure and the chemistry of the deep. The entire assembly is canted at an unnatural angle, as if someone's last act was to drive it down with desperate force. The rest of the room is a study in violence. Buckled bulkheads, cables torn loose, glass shards embedded in the deck. Yet this key, this small mechanism, remains fixed to its post, a silent witness to the chaos. The ROV hovers, cameras recording every detail. In the control van, the pilot's voice is low and steady, narrating position, timestamp, and the condition of the artifact. No one speaks above a whisper. The pressure outside is 9 tons per square inch, but inside the radio room, time seems to have stopped. The evidence is clear. The key was not at rest. Someone tried to send a message. The deep holds its secrets, but the facts are there, preserved in darkness, waiting for the world to notice. A forensic technician sits at a stainless steel bench, hands steady as she arranges two Navy-issue Morse keys side by side. One is a control, untouched since the 1940s. The other is rigged to a power supply, its contacts monitored by a digital oscilloscope. She locks the lever down with a steel clip, mimicking the desperate setup found inside the Indianapolis wreck. Voltage climbs to 100 volts direct current, matching the output of the ship's original transmitters. Within seconds, a blue-white arc dances across the contacts. The oscilloscope records a sharp spike, then a steady plateau as current surges through the circuit. The technician holds her breath. After 90 seconds, the contacts glow, edges softening. A faint wisp of smoke curls upward. She cuts the power. Once cool, the key is disassembled under a microscope. The contacts are fused, silver and brass melted together, a single bead bridging the gap. This is not the random corrosion of 70 years at sea. It is the signature of live current, sustained just long enough to weld metal under pressure. The technician compares this result to high-resolution images from the Petrel ROV. The alignment of the fused contacts, the discoloration, the pattern of arc erosion, each detail matches the bench test. No simple mechanical force could create this. Only live power, locked in place, could have left such a mark. The Navy's claim that the radio room went instantly dark does not hold up under this scrutiny. The evidence shows the electrical system was alive, at least for those final, critical moments. The technician's report is clinical, the language precise. Fusion pattern formed under 90 seconds of current, consistent with a continuous transmit signal. Arc erosion present, no evidence of post-mortem corrosion bridging. The implication is clear. The radio men did not fail. The signal went out. The key's fused contacts are a silent record, preserved by pressure and time, defying the official story that power was lost before a distress call could be sent. Joseph Moran's name carries weight among the survivors of the Indianapolis. He was radio man first class, stationed at his post on the night the ship went down. In interviews recorded decades after the war, Moran never wavered in his account of those final minutes. Amid the chaos, smoke, fire, and the deck tilting beneath his feet, he kept his eyes on the transmitter panel. He described watching the antenna current meter, a needle that would only swing if the transmitter was pushing power out to the aerial. As the emergency generator sputtered, Moran saw that needle jump. The moment burned into his memory, the unmistakable tremor of a live signal, the proof that the system was still breathing even as the ship was dying. Moran's testimony stands apart from technical speculation and official denials. He was there, hands on the equipment, reading the dials as the compartment filled with smoke and seawater. He later told oral historians that he watched another radio man, a name lost to time, jam a steel clip onto the Morse key, locking it down. The message, he believed, was simple and desperate. A continuous string of dots and dashes, the universal SOS, sent out on every frequency the set could muster. Moran insisted that the transmission lasted for at least a minute, maybe more, before the power finally failed. He remembered the static in his headphones, the faint whine of the transmitter, the sense that they were not alone in the dark. For years, the Navy's official record dismissed these accounts as unreliable, the result of stress or confusion or tricks of memory under trauma. But Moran's story never changed. He described the details with a clarity that defies dismissal. The vibration of the antenna meter, the lockdown key, the last-ditch effort to punch through the static and reach someone, anyone, on the other end. His words bridged the gap between artifact and experience, giving a human face to the forensic evidence. The fused contacts on that key, the physical scars left by live current, match exactly what Moran described from memory. For the families of the lost and for those who survived, his testimony is more than recollection, it is vindication. The radio men did not fail. The call for help was sent. The truth, preserved in both steel and memory, refuses to be buried. A logbook page, yellowed and brittle at the edges, carries the quiet weight of a crime scene. The entry is dated July 30th, 1945. Time, 0025 hours. The handwriting is sharp, each letter pressed deep into the paper as if the author knew it would matter. The transcription is jagged, broken by static, but the intent is unmistakable. SOS, latitude 12, longitude 134, sinking fast. The latitude and longitude match the last known position of the Indianapolis, a set of numbers that, for 4 days, no one claimed to have seen. Beneath the Morse code, a second hand has left its mark. A thick line of red grease pencil cuts across the page, slashing through the coordinates. Above it, a single command reads, "Disregard." Japanese deception, no authentication. The annotation is rushed, the pressure of the pencil visible in the fibers. The ink from the original entry has bled slightly, as if the page was damp when the message was recorded. The red wax sits on top, newer, almost defiant. No signature, no initials, only the chain of command implied by the handwriting and the authority of the red pencil. The rest of the log resumes its routine: weather, traffic, coded signals from other ships. But this entry is different. It sits between the lines, an SOS received, and then, with a single stroke, silenced. The document records not just a message, but a decision, a moment when help was within reach, and then erased by doubt. Authenticating a wartime logbook means more than a glance at the handwriting or a check against the official roster. The process begins in the lab, where specialists separate the page from myth by breaking it down to its smallest parts. Paper fibers are sampled under magnification, searching for the telltale blend of cotton and wood pulp used in Navy stationery from the mid-1940s. Any tropical mold or chemical residue is cataloged, mapped, and compared to archives from other Pacific-based records. Handwriting experts scan the page, cross-referencing pen pressure and letter formation with duty logs from Tacloban's Radio Shack. Any deviation, a stray loop, a slant in the capitals, is flagged for further study. The lab builds a timeline, layering chemical results with known supply shipments and personnel assignments. Each step is documented, peer-reviewed, and archived. Only after these protocols are met can the document be considered authentic, a genuine witness to the events of July 30, 1945. Until then, every detail remains under scrutiny. The science is slow, methodical, and relentless, because in cases like this, certainty is the only defense against history's shadows. Plotting the events minute by minute, the timeline draws two lines that meet in the darkness over the Philippine Sea. The ship's last known position, latitude 12 degrees north, longitude 134 degrees east, lands inside the quarter-hour window marked by the torpedo strikes. The logbook entry from Tacloban, timestamped 0025 hours, sits just 10 minutes after the Indianapolis vanished beneath the waves. On navigational charts, the ship's plotted course and the radio station's reception radius overlap almost perfectly. This is not a vague coincidence. The distance from the reported coordinates to Tacloban antennas falls well within the range of a high-frequency distress signal, even under wartime atmospheric conditions. The Morse code transcription, though broken by static, matches the pattern of a vessel under catastrophic duress. Short bursts, repeated coordinates, the word sinking forced between gaps of silence. Overlaying the attack window with the logbook timestamp, the possibility that a signal was received becomes more than plausible. It becomes a matter of physics, not hearsay. The technical record, stripped of speculation, shows that the time, location, and radio propagation all align. The distress call, if sent, would have arrived at Tacloban within minutes, exactly as the logbook records. The evidence locks the two events together on the timeline: impact and reception, cause and effect, leaving no room for the official story's convenient gaps. December 3rd, 1945. The courtroom at the Washington Navy Yard is crowded, silent except for the shuffling of papers and the low voices of lawyers. Captain Charles Butler McVay III sits at the defendant's table, his face drawn, uniform pressed with the precision of a man who knows every detail will be scrutinized. The charge sheet is simple but devastating, hazarding his ship by failing to zigzag, thereby allowing the enemy submarine I-58 to achieve a successful attack. The Navy's top brass, desperate for answers after the loss of 879 men, have chosen their focus. Not the denial of an escort, not the confusion in communications, not the 4-day gap that doomed the survivors. The trial's spotlight burns only on McVay's alleged failure to order evasive maneuvers. The prosecution calls witnesses to the stand, officers, navigation experts, even Mochitsura Hashimoto, the commander of the Japanese 158. Hashimoto testifies through an interpreter explaining that zigzagging would have made little difference. The torpedoes, he says, would have found their mark regardless. But the courtroom is not a place for nuance. The Navy's own investigators present the official line. The radio room lost power instantly, no SOS was sent, and so no one could have known the ship was missing. The court-martial becomes less a search for truth than a public demonstration of accountability. In the absence of answers, someone must bear the weight. McVay stands alone, made to answer for failures that began far above his rank. The verdict will haunt him for the rest of his life, but for the families of the lost, the real questions about signals ignored and protocols broken remain unanswered. Every claim in this investigation stands or falls on the strength of its evidence. That means every artifact, every document, and every testimony must be labeled for what it actually is: proven fact, working hypothesis, or outright speculation. The Morse key, the fused contacts, the Tacloban logbook, none of these can be accepted at face value until they pass through the crucible of independent verification. That begins with chain of custody records, laboratory protocols, and open access to the original Petrel remotely operated vehicle footage and metadata. Naval archives in Washington and Manila hold classified traffic logs and duty rosters from July 1945. These records must be declassified and released for public review. Only then can the authenticity of the logbook entry or the radio room's condition be judged by more than a single team or documentary crew. A forensic pathologist experienced in artifact authentication lays out the process. First, establish provenance. Where did the logbook come from? Who handled it and when? Next, conduct paper and ink analysis, including fiber composition, chemical signatures, and pigment dating, using methods such as chromatography and X-ray fluorescence. Handwriting, ink, and paper must be treated as physical evidence subject to scientific testing. Finally, a panel of independent experts reviews the findings, cross-checking handwriting against known samples from Tacloban station personnel. Without this level of transparency, any claim about the logbook or the Morse key remains an open question, not a settled fact. The same standard applies to survivor testimony and oral histories. Every account must be matched against the physical record and the operational realities of 1945 naval communications. If new evidence exists, if someone has a fragment of the original distress transmission, a radio log, or a piece of hardware from the wreck, it deserves to be tested, not just believed. This is not about confirming a preferred story, it is about demanding the same rigor from all sides, especially when the reputation of the lost and the living is at stake. The case remains open, and the burden of proof rests with those who claim to have found what history says should not exist. Official records still shield their secrets, and the truth of the Indianapolis lingers in classified archives and unanswered questions. As long as institutions decide which stories survive, history remains vulnerable to erasure and distortion. Today, the difference between tragedy and betrayal is not just buried at sea, it is determined by what we are allowed to see. The silence of the deep reminds us, some signals are ignored by choice, not by chance. Share your thoughts below.